Darkness in the city. The episode begins with a shot of a bustling yet eerie city. Despite the busy streets and towering buildings, there's an unsettling feeling in the air, as though something sinister lurks beneath the surface. Omar, the main character, is introduced as a young journalist in his mid-30s. He is passionate about uncovering the truth, even when it puts him in danger. Omar is not your typical reporter. He's the kind who doesn't shy away from digging deep into the darkest corners of society. He's known for his investigative reports that expose corruption and crime, but this new case is different. It's personal. The episode opens with Omar receiving a late-night phone call. It's from a source he hasn't spoken to in years, someone who only reaches out when there's something big going on. The voice on the other end is shaky, and the message is cryptic. People are disappearing. No one's talking about it, but it's happening. Meet me at the old market at midnight. Intrigued but wary, Omar grabs his notebook and heads out into the cold, foggy night. As he walks through the quiet streets, he can't shake the feeling that he's being watched. The camera pans to shadows lurking in dark alleys, building suspense. The viewer can feel that something is off, though Omar remains focused. At the old market, a forgotten part of the city now left to decay, Omar meets his source, an old friend named Hassan. Hassan looks nervous, constantly glancing over his shoulder. He tells Omar about a series of recent disappearances that the authorities are covering up. Each person went missing shortly after visiting a particular location on the outskirts of town, a place no one seems to remember until it's too late. Hassan explains that he tried going to the police, but they brushed him off, claiming the missing people either left town or never existed in the first place. He hands Omar a file filled with photos, dates, and addresses of the missing. All of them seem unrelated, different backgrounds, ages, and professions, but one thing ties them together. They all visited a mysterious building before vanishing. Before Hassan can reveal more, he suddenly freezes, staring into the distance. Omar turns to see what caught his attention, but there's nothing there, just the empty market. Hassan's face turns pale, and he mutters something under his breath. They know we're here. Without another word, Hassan bolts, disappearing into the night, leaving Omar standing alone. Confused but determined, Omar flips through the file and notices an address written on the back of one of the photos. It's the address of the building Hassan mentioned, a place on the outskirts of the city, abandoned for years. The next day, Omar visits Leila, a private investigator and old friend who once worked with him on a previous case. Leila is sharp, tough, and resourceful. She's the kind of person who never backs down from a challenge. Although their friendship has been strained over the years, Omar knows he needs her help to dig deeper into this case. When Omar explains the situation, Leila is skeptical at first, but she can see the seriousness in his eyes. She agrees to help, though she warns him, "We're getting involved in something bigger than we realize. We need to be careful." The episode ends with a haunting shot of the mysterious building, covered in graffiti and shadows, as Omar and Leila prepare to investigate it. The camera zooms in on a broken window, and for a brief moment, a shadowy figure can be seen inside before it fades into the darkness. As the screen fades to black, a message appears. Some doors should never be opened. This detailed episode sets the stage for the larger mystery, while establishing the characters and the eerie atmosphere that will drive the story forward. Episode 2. Searching the past. The second episode begins right where the first one left off, with Omar and Leila standing outside the mysterious abandoned building. It's early morning, and the fog hangs heavy in the air. The building looms over them, a relic of the past covered in rust, grime, and overgrown vines. Broken windows and crumbling walls make it clear that no one has been inside for a long time, or at least, that's what it seems. Leila pulls out a flashlight from her bag, and the two carefully enter through the main entrance, stepping over broken glass and debris. The air inside is thick and stale, and the sound of their footsteps echoes eerily through the empty hallways. As they walk deeper into the building, they notice strange markings on the walls, symbols that neither of them recognize. It feels less like an abandoned building and more like a place where something dark had once happened. They come across an old stairwell leading to the basement. Hesitating for a moment, Omar suggests they start searching upstairs, but Leila insists on going down to the basement first, sensing that's where the real secrets might be hidden. As they descend, the air becomes colder, and the sound of dripping water echoes around them. When they reach the basement, it's pitch dark. Their flashlights reveal a large open room, cluttered with old furniture, broken equipment, and piles of dusty papers scattered across the floor. It looks like a makeshift laboratory that had been hastily abandoned. Leila picks up one of the papers from the floor, brushing off the dust. It's a document dated over 40 years ago, titled Energy Transfer Experiment Number 17. Confused, she flips through more papers, all describing strange scientific experiments that were conducted in this very building. Omar begins photographing the documents while Leila continues digging through the pile. Suddenly, they find a locked metal cabinet tucked away in the corner of the room. With some effort, they manage to pry it open, revealing a stack of old folders, all labeled with the word confidential. Inside, they discover detailed reports of people who had participated in these experiments decades ago. As they flip through the reports, they notice a chilling pattern. Every participant had disappeared under mysterious circumstances, just like the people who have recently gone missing. The deeper they dig, the more they realize that this building was once a secret government facility, used during the 1970s to conduct illegal experiments on unsuspecting civilians. These experiments involved harnessing an unknown form of energy that was believed to have the potential to alter human perception and behavior. But something had gone horribly wrong. Many of the test subjects disappeared, and the experiments were shut down without any public explanation. Omar and Leila are shaken by their discovery. Leila suggests that the recent disappearances might be connected to these old experiments, but Omar isn't convinced. He points out that the experiments were abandoned decades ago. Why would people start disappearing now? Leila agrees it's strange, but before they can theorize further, they hear footsteps coming from upstairs. They quickly turn off their flashlights and hide behind some of the old equipment. The footsteps get louder, and then they hear voices, two men, speaking in low tones. Omar tries to peek around the corner to get a glimpse of who's there, but Leila pulls him back. The men seem to be searching for something, and one of them says, "We need to find it before they do. The boss won't be happy if it falls into the wrong hands." After a tense few moments, the men leave, and the building falls silent once more. Shaken but determined, Omar and Leila decide it's time to leave. They gather the documents they found and carefully make their way out of the basement, ensuring no one notices them. As they exit the building, Omar's phone rings. It's Hassan. His voice is frantic, and he tells Omar that he's been followed since their meeting at the market. Hassan warns them to be careful. There are people who want to keep the past buried. They're willing to do whatever it takes to ensure the truth never comes out. The episode ends with Omar and Leila standing outside the building, the documents in hand. Leila looks at Omar and says, "We've only scratched the surface. Whatever they were doing here, it's not over." Omar nods, a mix of determination and fear in his eyes. The camera slowly zooms out to reveal the full, ominous structure of the abandoned building. In the background, thunder rumbles, signaling that the storm, both literal and metaphorical, is just beginning. As the screen fades to black, another message appears. Some secrets are meant to stay hidden, but for how long? Episode 3. The Truth Revealed. The third episode opens with Omar and Leila back at her office, a small, cluttered space filled with papers, old case files, and a map of the city pinned to the wall. They sit in silence, processing everything they uncovered at the abandoned building. Leila is furiously typing notes into her laptop, trying to piece together the mystery, while Omar flips through the photos and documents they took from the basement. Suddenly, a realization hits Omar. One of the names in the old experiment files matches the name of a recent missing person. He pulls up a photo from Hassan's file of a man who disappeared a few weeks ago. "This is Kareem Youssef, right?" Omar says, holding up the image. Leila looks over at him, her eyes widening in recognition. She quickly cross-references the name with the files they recovered from the building. There it is, Kareem Youssef, listed as a participant in one of the energy transfer experiments from the 1970s. How is this possible? Leila asks. He couldn't have been part of those experiments. He wasn't even born when they happened. Omar nods in agreement, but there's something nagging at him. He starts theorizing that perhaps these experiments never really stopped. Maybe they continued under the radar, using new test subjects, and the disappearances are the result of the same energy manipulation from the past. Before they can discuss further, Omar's phone buzzes again. It's a message from Hassan. "Meet me tonight at the old power plant. I've found something big." Leila looks skeptical. Hassan's acting strange. "We need to be careful." Omar agrees, but they both know they don't have many options. If Hassan has more information, it could be the key to solving the case. They decide to meet him later that evening. Later that night, Omar and Leila make their way to the old power plant on the outskirts of the city. The sky is dark, clouds swirling ominously above them, and the air feels heavy with tension. The power plant is an enormous, decaying structure that hasn't been operational in years, yet something about it feels unsettlingly alive. There are lights on in one of the windows, and a low hum vibrates through the ground. They enter the building cautiously, their flashlights cutting through the gloom. As they explore the dark, industrial corridors, they hear a faint voice coming from one of the lower levels. It's Hassan. They follow the sound down a narrow flight of stairs into a dimly lit basement where they find Hassan, sitting at a table covered in old blueprints and documents. Hassan looks up, his face pale and gaunt. "I found the source," he says, his voice barely above a whisper. He points to one of the blueprints, which shows a hidden section beneath the power plant, a chamber deep underground where the original energy experiments took place. They never stopped. They just moved the operation here. Omar and Leila exchange glances, both of them realizing the gravity of what Hassan is saying. Hassan goes on to explain that the energy they were experimenting with wasn't just a scientific anomaly. It was something far more dangerous, something that had the ability to warp reality and manipulate the human mind. The people who disappeared weren't just taken, they were absorbed by this energy, lost in another dimension of sorts. "They call it the pulse," Hassan says, his eyes wild. "It's like a living thing, feeding on fear and negative emotions. Once it touches you, it's only a matter of time before you're gone." Omar and Leila listen in stunned silence. Hassan pulls out an old cassette recorder, placing it on the table. "I recorded something," he says. "It was from one of the early experiments. You need to hear this." He presses play, and the room fills with the crackling sound of an old recording. A voice, trembling with fear, begins to speak. "Experiment 12. The subject is responding to the energy source. It's starting to take hold. We can't control it. The readings are off the charts. The subject is changing. No, we have to stop." The recording cuts off abruptly, followed by a chilling silence. Before they can fully process what they've heard, they hear footsteps echoing from the hallway. Omar quickly turns off the recorder, and the three of them scramble to hide behind one of the large industrial machines. The footsteps grow louder, and soon, two figures appear in the doorway, dressed in black, their faces obscured. They seem to be searching for something, talking in hushed voices. "Did you check the basement?" one of them asks the other. "Not yet, but we can't let anyone find out what's down there. It's too late to turn back now." Omar, Leila, and Hassan remain hidden, their hearts pounding as the two figures move through the room, scanning the area. Just as it seems they might be discovered, a loud noise echoes from upstairs, causing the intruders to leave in a hurry. Once the coast is clear, Omar, Leila, and Hassan emerge from their hiding place. Hassan is shaking, clearly terrified. "We need to leave, now," he whispers, gathering the documents quickly. Omar agrees, but Leila hesitates. "What about the chamber?" she asks. "If what Hassan says is true, we need to see it for ourselves." Hassan looks at her like she's lost her mind. "You don't understand," he says, panic rising in his voice. "That place, it's alive. It's not just a chamber. It's the heart of the pulse." Despite his warnings, Omar and Leila are determined. They decide to go down into the underground chamber to uncover the full truth, even if it means putting themselves in extreme danger. The episode ends with the three of them standing at the entrance to an old, rusted elevator shaft that leads deep below the power plant. As they step inside the elevator, the camera zooms in on Omar's face, filled with a mixture of fear and resolve. The lights flicker, and the episode ends with the sound of the elevator descending into the unknown. The screen fades to black with the message: "Once you've seen the truth, there's no turning back." This episode reveals crucial information about the experiments and introduces the concept of the pulse, raising the stakes and building suspense as Omar, Leila, and Hassan prepare for a final confrontation with the unknown forces controlling the city. Episode 4. The final showdown. The final episode begins with the old, rusted elevator creaking as it descends deep into the underground chamber beneath the power plant. Omar, Leila, and Hassan stand in tense silence, the atmosphere thick with anticipation. The flickering light overhead adds to the claustrophobic feeling as the elevator groans, slowly making its way down. Omar grips his flashlight tightly, and Leila keeps her hand close to her back, where she has a small weapon, just in case. As the elevator reaches the bottom, the doors slide open with a screech, revealing a long, dimly lit corridor. The air down here is colder, and there's a low humming sound reverberating through the walls. Omar steps forward cautiously, with Leila and Hassan close behind. The corridor leads to a large, circular metal door, sealed shut and covered in strange symbols similar to those they found in the abandoned building. "That must be it," Hassan whispers, pointing to the door. "That's where the pulse is contained." Leila examines the door for a moment before noticing a control panel on the side. She presses a few buttons, and with a loud, metallic clink, the door begins to open. The sound echoes through the chamber, and as the door slowly swings open, they are greeted by a blast of cold air that chills them to the bone. Inside is a vast, cavernous room. At its center stands a massive machine, rusted, ancient, and pulsating with an eerie, faint glow. Tubes and wires run from the machine into the walls, connecting it to the entire facility. The hum grows louder as they approach, and the ground seems to tremble beneath their feet. "This is it," Hassan says, his voice shaking. "This is where they conducted the experiments, and where the energy was harnessed." Omar and Leila stand in awe, but there's something deeply unsettling about the room. The air feels heavy, as if the energy itself is alive, watching them. Omar notices a series of monitors on the far side of the room, and he walks over to investigate. The screens flicker to life, showing old footage from the experiments, people strapped to machines, their faces contorted in agony as the energy took hold of them. The footage is grainy and distorted, but it's clear that these people were subjected to unimaginable suffering. Leila joins Omar at the monitors. "They knew it was dangerous," she says, her voice barely above a whisper. "And they kept going anyway." Just as they begin to grasp the full horror of what happened here, a loud clanging sound echoes through the chamber. Omar and Leila turn to see Hassan backing away from the machine, his eyes wide with terror. "It's waking up," he stammers. "We need to shut it down before it's too late." Suddenly, the machine's glow intensifies, and the hum becomes deafening. The entire room begins to shake violently, and the energy emanating from the machine starts to ripple through the air, distorting reality around them. Shadows dance on the walls, and strange, ghostly images flicker in and out of existence. Omar rushes to the control panel near the machine, desperately trying to figure out how to shut it down. Leila stands guard, watching for any signs of danger. Hassan, overwhelmed by fear, pleads with them to leave. "We're not going to make it out of here alive," he shouts. Omar ignores him, his fingers flying over the controls. "There has to be a way to stop this," he mutters. Suddenly, he finds a switch labeled "Emergency Shutdown." Without hesitation, he flips the switch, but nothing happens. The machine roars louder, and the energy begins to spiral out of control. "It's not working," Omar yells. "There has to be another way." Leila's eyes dart around the room, scanning for anything that might help. She notices a small compartment at the base of the machine, marked with the same strange symbols they've been seeing throughout the facility. "There," she shouts, pointing to it. "That might be the core." Omar and Leila rush over and pry open the compartment, revealing a glowing crystal-like object pulsing with energy. "This is it," Omar says. "This is what's feeding the machine." "We have to destroy it," Leila replies, her voice firm. Omar hesitates for a moment, knowing that tampering with the core could have unpredictable and catastrophic consequences. But they don't have a choice. The machine is becoming more unstable by the second, and if they don't act fast, the entire facility and possibly the city could be consumed by the pulse. Using a nearby metal rod, Omar smashes the crystal with all his strength. The moment the crystal shatters, a blinding flash of light fills the room, and the machine emits a deafening, high-pitched screech. The energy begins to collapse in on itself, and for a moment, time seems to stop. Then, with a massive shockwave, the machine implodes, sending Omar, Leila, and Hassan flying across the room. When the dust settles, the room is silent. The machine is destroyed, and the pulsating energy is gone. Omar and Leila slowly pick themselves up, dazed but alive. Hassan, lying on the ground, looks up at them with disbelief. "You did it," he whispers. "It's over." But as Omar and Leila help Hassan to his feet, the ground begins to tremble again, this time more violently than before. "We need to get out of here," Omar says, his voice filled with urgency. The entire facility is collapsing. The three of them sprint for the elevator, the walls shaking and debris falling around them. They barely make it inside the elevator as the ceiling caves in. The ride up feels agonizingly slow, but finally, they reach the surface and escape the collapsing power plant just in time. Outside, the sky is clear, and the eerie hum's gone. The city, still distant, seems untouched by the chaos beneath the ground. Omar and Leila stand in silence, catching their breath as they watch the power plant sink into the earth. Hassan turns to them, his face pale but relieved. "You saved us," he says. "You stopped it." Omar, still processing everything, looks at the horizon. "We stopped this," he replies, "but there's more out there, more secrets, more shadows." Leila nods, knowing that their journey for the truth is far from over. The screen fades to black, with one final message. Some battles are won, but the war for truth never ends. This final episode delivers the thrilling climax, with Omar and Leila destroying the machine and narrowly escaping with their lives. The mystery is resolved, but the story ends on a note of suspense, hinting that there may be more secrets lurking in the shadows, setting the stage for potential future adventures.